I was standing on the balcony of my Seattle penthouse when my phone buzzed with a message that made my blood run cold. It was from Blair, my younger sister. The same sister who had humiliated me at her wedding 3 months ago. The same sister who had spent years making me feel invisible, worthless. Like I was nothing more than a stepping stone for her glory. Her message read, "Alyssa, I made a terrible mistake. Blake left me. Everyone has turned their backs on me. I have nothing left. Can you help me?" I stared at those words. And instead of the satisfaction I thought I would feel, I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. The woman who had tormented me for 32 years was finally getting a taste of her own medicine, and I realized something profound in that moment. I didn't need her to suffer to be happy. I had already won by choosing myself. But before I tell you what I did next, let me take you back to where it all began. If you want to hear how I went from being the family scapegoat to living my best life, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling me if you have ever dealt with a toxic family member. Your support means everything. And trust me, this story gets wild. 3 months earlier, I woke up on the morning of Blair's wedding with a knot in my stomach that had been tightening for weeks. The invitation had arrived 6 months prior, embossed in gold lettering on cream cardstock so thick it felt like a weapon. Blair Catherine, Thorne and Blake Harrison, Morrison request the honor of your presence. The honor. As if my presence was an honor and not an obligation. A checkbox on Blair's list of people she needed to parade her perfect life in front of. I had spent the previous evening at Nordstrom, agonizing over dresses. The olive green one had caught my eye immediately. Sophisticated and elegant, with clean lines that made me feel powerful. But when I checked the price tag, my stomach dropped. $1,200. 3 months of my coffee budget. 3 months of eating ramen for lunch. 3 months of guilt every time I swiped my credit card. But I bought it anyway, because I knew what would happen if I showed up in something modest. Blair would make a scene. She always did. My apartment that morning was a mess of discarded outfits and half-drunk coffee cups. I had barely slept, my mind replaying every family gathering where Blair had managed to make me feel small. There was Thanksgiving 2 years ago when she announced to the entire table that I was still single because I was married to my career, complete with air quotes and a pitying look. There was Christmas last year when she opened my gift, a beautiful cashmere scarf I had saved for months to buy, and said, "Oh, Alyssa, you really shouldn't have. You really shouldn't have. This color washes me out completely." And then there was the engagement party. God. The engagement party. Blair had insisted I give a toast. I had prepared something heartfelt about watching her grow up, about being proud of the woman she had become. But before I could finish, she grabbed the microphone from my hand and said, "Thanks, sis." Everyone. My sister is so sweet. But let's be real. She's probably just jealous. Don't worry, Alyssa. Your time will come. Maybe. The room had erupted in uncomfortable laughter. I had smiled through it, as always. But inside I was dying. As I applied my makeup that morning, my hands were shaking. I had perfected the art of looking put together while falling apart inside. Foundation to cover the dark circles from sleepless nights. Concealer to hide the stress breakouts. Mascara to make my eyes look bigger. More alert. More present. I stared at my reflection and practiced my smile. The smile I would wear for the next 8 hours. The smile that said everything was fine when nothing was fine. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Catherine." I let it go to voicemail. I couldn't deal with her right now. I couldn't handle another reminder that I needed to be on my best behavior at Blair's wedding, that I shouldn't cause any drama by reacting to Blair's inevitable jabs. As if I was the problem. As if I had ever been anything but the peacekeeper, the one who swallowed her hurt and smiled through the pain. The Uber arrived at 10:30. The wedding wasn't until 3. But Blair had scheduled a family brunch at 11 that I was expected to attend. Expected. Not invited. There was a difference. I climbed into the back seat, careful not to wrinkle my olive dress, and watched the Seattle skyline disappear behind me as we headed toward Tiger Amber Valley, an exclusive venue in the countryside that cost more per hour than I made in a month. The brunch was held in a private garden on the estate, All white linens and champagne fountains and tiny sandwiches that cost $30 a plate. I arrived to find Blair holding court at the center table, surrounded by her bridesmaids, all of them laughing at something on her phone. When she saw me, her face lit up, but not with warmth. With opportunity. "Alyssa," she called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You made it. I was worried you'd be too busy working to show up for your own sister's wedding." I walked over, my smile firmly in place. I wouldn't miss it for the world. "Blair, you look beautiful." She did look beautiful. Her hair was swept up in an elaborate updo. Her makeup was flawless. And she wore a silk robe embroidered with Mrs. Morrison on the back. She looked like a princess, which was exactly what she had always wanted to be. "This old thing," she said, gesturing to her robe. "Blake's mother had it custom made in Paris." "Speaking of Blake's mother, have you met her yet? She's wonderful." She was just saying how nice it must be for me to have an older sister to look up to. You know, as a cautionary tale. The bridesmaids giggled. I kept smiling. "I'm sure she's lovely." "She is," Blair said, her eyes glittering with malice. "She's also very traditional. She believes women should balance career and family, not choose one over the other. But then again, not everyone can have it all." "Right, Alyssa." I excused myself to get a mimosa, my hands trembling as I gripped the champagne flute. This was going to be a long day. The brunch dragged on for 2 hours. I was seated at the end of the table, between Aunt Martha, who could barely hear, and a bridesmaid named Tiffany, who spent the entire meal on her phone. Blair made 3 more comments about my single status, 2 about my sensible career, and 1 about how I should really consider freezing my eggs before it was too late. My mother said nothing. My father laughed along with everyone else. By the time I escaped to my assigned room to change for the ceremony, I was exhausted. The room was nice, at least, big windows overlooking the gardens, a comfortable bed, and a private bathroom. I took a long shower, trying to wash away the morning's humiliation, and then carefully put on my olive dress. It fit perfectly, hugging my curves in all the right places, the color bringing out the green in my eyes. I looked good. I looked expensive. I looked like someone who had her life together. I should have known it wouldn't last. The ceremony was scheduled for 3 o'clock sharp. At 2:45, I made my way downstairs and stepped outside into the golden afternoon light. The venue was transformed. White chairs arranged in perfect rows, an aisle covered in rose petals, and an arch covered in flowers that must have cost a fortune. Guests were already arriving, dressed in their finest, air-kissing and exclaiming over how beautiful everything was. I was scanning the crowd for a familiar face, anyone who might offer a moment of genuine human connection, when I heard Blair's voice behind me. "Oh my God. Alyssa, you finally crawled out of your office." I turned to see her striding toward me, no longer in her silk robe, but in a stunning white pre-ceremony dress, something to wear for photos before the main event. Her face was twisted with an emotion I couldn't quite read. Contempt, maybe, or triumph. And in that dress, she continued, her voice rising. "You look like a wilted vegetable." Seriously. Several guests turned to stare. I felt the familiar burn of humiliation creeping up my neck, but I kept my face neutral. "Hello, Blair. You look lovely." "Everyone, this is my sister Alyssa," Blair announced, gesturing to me like I was an exhibit in a museum. "The sister I have to remind Mom exists. And of course, still the reigning queen of singlehood at every family event." A man in a tuxedo laughed loudly. Others looked uncomfortable but said nothing. My mother appeared from somewhere in the crowd, her face tight. "Blair. Honey, maybe we should." "What?" "Mom, I'm just being honest. Alyssa doesn't mind." "Do you?" Blair looked at me with false sweetness. "You're used to being the joke by now." "Right." Before I could respond, a bridesmaid appeared with a tray of champagne. She was the same blonde from earlier, Tiffany, and she was walking quickly. Too quickly. The tray tilted, and champagne splashed across the front of my dress, soaking the expensive fabric. "Oops," Tiffany squealed, her hand flying to her mouth. "I'm so clumsy, I'm so sorry." But her eyes weren't sorry. They were gleeful. I looked at Blair, who was watching with barely concealed satisfaction. And I understood. This wasn't an accident. This was orchestrated. The champagne was cold and sticky, spreading across the olive fabric in a dark stain. People were staring. Some were laughing behind their hands. Others looked away, embarrassed for me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my own champagne in Blair's face. I wanted to walk out and never come back. Instead, I locked eyes with my sister and smiled. Not a warm smile, not a fake smile, but a cold, knowing smile that seemed to unsettle her. "Don't worry, little sister," I said, my voice calm and controlled. I brought a backup. The night is still young. I walked past her, my heels clicking on the stone pathway. My head held high even though my dress was ruined and my dignity was in shreds. Behind me, I heard Blair's frustrated huff. She had wanted me to break, to cry, to make a scene that would confirm her narrative that I was unstable, jealous, pathetic. I refused to give her that satisfaction. I made it back to my room and locked the door behind me. Only then did I let the mask fall. I looked at myself in the mirror, at the champagne stain spreading across my chest, and I felt the tears burning behind my eyes. But I wouldn't cry. Crying was what Blair wanted. Crying would mean she won. I pulled out my phone and opened the text thread with my best friend, Maya. She was the only person who really understood what my family was like. The only person I could be honest with. "It's already a disaster." I typed. "Blair orchestrated someone spilling champagne on me. In front of everyone. I don't know how much more of this I can take." Maya's response came immediately. "Get out. Just leave. You don't owe them anything." She was right. I didn't owe them anything. I had paid for Blair's college when my parents claimed they couldn't afford it, covering $20,000 in tuition over 4 years. I had bought her first car, a used Honda that cost me $8,000 and 6 months of savings. I had paid her rent when she was between jobs for 8 months, covering $1,200 a month while she went to yoga classes and brunch with friends. I had even contributed $15,000 toward this wedding because my mother guilt-tripped me, saying it was my duty as the older sister to help make Blair's day special. And how had Blair thanked me? By making me the punchline of every family joke, by ensuring everyone knew I was the failure, the spinster, the sad older sister who couldn't get her life together. I didn't have a backup dress. That was a lie, I told Blair. But I did have a stain remover pen in my purse. And I spent 20 minutes scrubbing at the champagne stain until it was barely visible. The dress was still damp, but it would have to do. I touched up my makeup. I fixed my hair and rebuilt my armor. By the time I walked back outside, the ceremony was about to begin. Ushers were directing guests to their seats, and I followed the crowd, expecting to be seated with family near the front. But the usher looked at his list and shook his head. "Alyssa Thorne, you're at table 14. My heart sank. Table 14. But I'm family. Immediate family. He checked his list again. "Sorry. Ma'am. Table 14. It's right through those doors." I walked through the doors into the reception hall, which was already set up for dinner. Table 14 was easy to find. It was positioned directly next to the kitchen doors, where servers were rushing back and forth with trays and dishes. The table was small, clearly an afterthought, and the chairs were already occupied by Aunt Martha, 2 distant cousins I had met once at a funeral 5 years ago, and an elderly man I didn't recognize. This was my place in the family. The throwaway table. The table for people who didn't matter enough to sit with the real family. I sat down slowly, feeling numb. Through the windows, I could see the ceremony beginning. Blair was walking down the aisle on my father's arm, radiant and beaming. Blake was waiting at the altar, tears in his eyes. My mother was dabbing at her face with a handkerchief. It was perfect. A fairy tale wedding. And I was watching it through a window. Sitting next to the kitchen, Aunt Martha leaned over and shouted, Alyssa still being picky. "Hasmida." I forced a smile. "Something like that. Aunt Martha. You better find yourself a man before your uterus dries up completely," she continued, her voice echoing across the room. "You're past your expiration date. Honey TikTok." Laughter erupted from somewhere nearby. I turned to see that the wall between the reception hall and the ceremony space was actually glass, and people on the other side could hear everything. Blair's bridesmaids were giggling, pointing at me. Even from a distance, I could see Blair smirking. The ceremony concluded, and guests began filtering into the reception hall for cocktail hour. I stayed at table 14, nursing a glass of wine, watching everyone else laugh and mingle and celebrate. No one approached me. No one asked how I was doing. I was invisible. Then a server, moving quickly with a heavy tray, slammed into my chair so hard that I jolted forward. My wine glass tipped over, spilling red wine all over my lap. The olive dress, already stained with champagne, was now soaked with Merlot. The server didn't apologize. He just kept walking, like I wasn't even there. This was the second time tonight. The second time my dress had been ruined. The second time I had been made to look foolish in front of everyone. I stood up slowly, my hands shaking, and dabbed at the stain with my napkin. It was useless. The dress was destroyed. I looked across the room and saw Blair watching me. She wasn't laughing anymore. She was staring with an expression I couldn't read. Satisfaction, guilt. It didn't matter. She had won. She had orchestrated this entire humiliating evening, and she had won. I excused myself and went to the bathroom, locking myself in a stall. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. This was supposed to be Blair's day. I was supposed to smile and be supportive, and play my role as the loving older sister. But I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that this was okay, that this was normal, that I deserved to be treated like this. I pulled out my phone and opened Maya's text thread again. I need to leave. I typed, I can't do this anymore. Before she could respond, I heard voices outside the stall. Blair's bridesmaids. Did you see Alyssa's dress? One of them said. Laughing, Blair told me to bump into her. I can't believe it actually worked. Blair's been planning this for weeks. Another voice said. She wanted to make sure Alyssa knew her place. God, can you imagine being 32 and still single? So pathetic. They were laughing. Actually laughing about my humiliation. I stayed frozen in the stall, barely breathing, until they left. Then I emerged, looked at myself in the mirror, and made a decision. I was done. Done playing the victim. Done being the family scapegoat. Done sacrificing my dignity for people who didn't value me. I walked back into the reception hall with my head high. My dress was stained and damp, but I didn't care anymore. I went straight to the bar and ordered a vodka tonic. Strong, rough night. The voice came from behind me, deep and warm. I turned and found myself looking up at a man who seemed completely out of place in this crowd. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair that was slightly too long, gray eyes that seemed to see right through me, and a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost more than my car. He had the kind of face that belonged in magazines, sharp jawline and high cheekbones. But there was something approachable about his smile. You could say that, I said, too tired to be polite. I'm Ethan Vance, he said, extending his hand. Blake's second cousin, twice removed. Or something equally complicated. I'm only here because my mother insisted. I shook his hand, his grip firm and warm. Alyssa Thorne, the bride's older sister, the disappointment of the family. He raised an eyebrow. That bad. Worse, I said, and found myself telling him everything. The champagne spill, the seating arrangement, Aunt Martha's comments, the wine incident. I don't know why I was being so honest with a complete stranger, but something about him made me feel safe, like he wouldn't judge me, like he might actually understand. He listened without interrupting, his expression darkening with each detail. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Do you want to get out of this hell? He finally asked. I blinked at him. What? Your sister has spent the entire evening torturing you, he said. I've been watching. Every little comment, every accident, every humiliation. It's calculated, and you don't deserve it. I can't just leave, I said, even though I wanted to. She's my sister. She doesn't treat you like a sister, Ethan said bluntly. She treats you like a prop, something to make herself look better by comparison. He was right. I knew he was right. But hearing it said out loud, by someone who had no stake in protecting my feelings, hit differently. I'm not suggesting you leave, Ethan continued. I'm suggesting you stay. But on your terms, with an ally. An ally, I repeated. Me, he said simply. I hate injustice. And I especially hate people who manipulate and belittle others for their own entertainment. You need someone in your corner tonight. Let me be that person. I stared at him, searching for the catch. There had to be a catch. Men like him, gorgeous and confident and kind, didn't just materialize out of nowhere to rescue pathetic older sisters from their own family weddings. But his eyes were sincere, and I was so tired of being alone. Why would you do that? I asked. Because you deserve better, he said. And because I'm looking for someone smart and strong to spend the evening with. You seem to fit the bill. Before I could respond, he took my hand. Not aggressively, but confidently, like he had every right to. Trust me, he said. Just for tonight. Let me help you take back your power. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Ethan led me out of the bar area and back into the main reception hall. Dinner was being served, and people were finding their seats. Every eye in the room seemed to turn toward us as we walked. Ethan was the kind of man who commanded attention without trying. Tall, handsome, radiating confidence. And he was holding my hand. I saw Blair freeze at the head table, her fork halfway to her mouth. Her eyes went wide, then narrowed. She stood up so abruptly that her chair tipped backward. My mother gasped. My father looked confused. The bridesmaids were whispering frantically to each other. Ethan walked me straight to table 14 and pulled out my chair, helping me sit like I was royalty. Then he took the seat next to me, completely ignoring the place card that said someone else's name. This should be interesting, he murmured. Blair recovered quickly. She marched over to our table, her white dress swishing dramatically, her face pale with rage. Alyssa, she said, her voice shrill. Who is this? What are you trying to do? I opened my mouth to respond. But Ethan stood up, positioning himself between me and Blair. He was so much taller than her that she had to crane her neck to look up at him. I'm Ethan Vance, he said, his voice calm but cold. Blake's family. And I'm choosing to sit with your sister because she's the most interesting person here. Blair's mouth opened and closed like a fish. You can't just change the seating arrangement. I just did, Ethan said pleasantly. Is there a problem? Yes. There's a problem. Blair's voice was rising, attracting attention from nearby tables. This is my wedding. You can't just swoop in and hijack my sister like some kind of hero. I'm not hijacking anyone, Ethan said. I'm simply keeping company with a woman who's been treated poorly all evening. If that bothers you, perhaps you should examine why. Blair's face flushed red. Alyssa, tell him to leave. Now. I looked up at my sister, this woman who had made my life miserable for years, and I felt something shift inside me. A crack in the armor I had built around my heart. For the first time in my life, someone was standing up for me. Really standing up for me. And it felt incredible. No, I said quietly. Blair's eyes widened. What? I said no. I repeated, louder this time. Ethan can sit wherever he wants. And right now, he wants to sit with me. For a moment, Blair looked genuinely shocked. Then her expression hardened into something ugly. Fine, she spat. Make a fool of yourself. You're good at that. She turned and stormed back to the head table. I could see her whispering furiously to Blake, gesturing in our direction. He looked over, confused, then shrugged. Clearly, this drama wasn't registering as important to him. Dinner was served. The food was exquisite, clearly very expensive, but I could barely taste it. My heart was pounding too hard. Ethan kept up a steady stream of conversation, asking me about my work, my interests, as my life outside of this toxic family dynamic. It was the first time all evening that someone had treated me like a person instead of a punchline. Halfway through the main course, the DJ's voice boomed through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, the bride would like to say a few words. My stomach dropped. Blair stood up at the head table, microphone in hand, looking radiant and dangerous. Thank you all so much for being here tonight, she began, her voice syrupy sweet. This is truly the happiest day of my life. I'm surrounded by everyone I love, everyone who matters. She paused, letting her eyes sweep across the room, landing on me for a brief, loaded moment. I especially want to thank my family, she continued. My parents, who taught me what true love looks like. My bridesmaids, who've been my rocks through this whole planning process. And of course, my older sister Alyssa. Here it comes. I thought, Alyssa has always been such an inspiration to me, Blair said, her voice dripping with false warmth. She taught me that you can have it all. A successful career, complete independence, and the freedom to never compromise. She's 32 now and still searching for love with nothing but her Excel spreadsheets to keep her warm at night. She's married to her job, literally and figuratively. The room erupted in laughter. Not polite chuckles, but real, belly-busting laughter. I saw my father laughing along. My mother looked uncomfortable but didn't intervene. Blake's parents were smiling. The bridesmaids were howling. So here's to you, Alyssa. Blair raised her glass. May you find a man who appreciates your dedication to work as much as your laptop does. And may you finally learn that sometimes being alone is a choice, not a circumstance. The laughter got louder. Someone whistled. I felt like I was suffocating, like the walls were closing in. This was beyond humiliation. This was cruelty. But then I felt Ethan's hand cover mine under the table, warm and steady. I looked at him, and he was staring at Blair with an expression of pure contempt. She's afraid of you, he said quietly. Just for me. That's why she does this. You terrify her. I terrify her, I said incredulously. Look at her. She's perfect. She has everything. She has nothing, Ethan said. No real confidence. No, real security. No real sense of self. She only feels valuable when she's tearing you down. That's not power. That's weakness. His words settled over me like a blanket. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking but my resolve hardening. Every eye in the room turned to me. Blair's smile faltered. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I simply looked at Blair. I really looked at her. And smiled. The same cold, knowing smile from earlier. Then I raised my glass. To Blair, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room. May your marriage be everything you deserve. The ambiguity hung in the air. Was it a sincere toast? A veiled insult no one knew. I drank, set down my glass, and sat back down. Ethan squeezed my hand. The room slowly came back to life. People returning to their conversations, but I could feel the shift. I had refused to break. I had refused to cry. I had refused to run. And Blair didn't know what to do with that. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. Dessert was served. More speeches were made. And finally, the DJ announced the first dance. Blair and Blake took to the floor, moving in perfect synchronization to some romantic ballad. They looked like a magazine spread. Perfect hair. Perfect dress. Perfect smiles. When the song ended, the DJ invited everyone to the dance floor. Ethan stood and offered me his hand. Dance with me, he said. It wasn't a question. We moved onto the floor, and he pulled me close. His hand settled on my waist, firm and possessive, and we began to move. He was an excellent dancer, leading me effortlessly through the song. Around us, other couples joined in, but I barely noticed them. All I could focus on was Ethan. His gray eyes locked on mine, making me feel like I was the only person in the room. You're stronger than you think, he said. I don't feel strong, I admitted. Strength isn't about never breaking, he said. It's about breaking and choosing to stand back up anyway. You've done that more times than anyone should have to. Before I could respond, someone crashed into us. Hard. I stumbled, and Ethan's arms tightened around me, keeping me upright. Blair stood there, her face twisted with rage. Get away from him, she screamed. He's mine. The music stopped. Everyone turned to stare. Blake appeared at Blair's side, looking confused and embarrassed. Blair. Honey. What are you doing? He said. She's trying to steal him, Blair pointed at me accusingly. She's always been jealous of me. And now she's trying to ruin my wedding. Ethan released me and stepped toward Blair. His expression was cold. Controlled fury. I'm Ethan Vance, he said, his voice cutting through the silence. I don't belong to anyone. And I certainly can't be stolen. I made a choice tonight to stand with a woman who deserves respect. Not a spoiled princess who tears others down to feel important. Blair's hand shot up as if to slap him. But Ethan caught her wrist effortlessly. Don't, he said quietly, but with such authority that Blair actually stepped back. I grabbed Blair's other arm. Not gently. My patience was gone. My willingness to be the bigger person was gone. I looked her straight in the eye. This is your wedding. Blair, I said, my voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Don't turn it into a circus. You've already humiliated me enough for one night. Let me have this one moment of peace. You don't deserve peace, Blair shrieked. You don't deserve anything. You're a failure. Alissa, oh, pathetic. Lonely failure. My father appeared. Finally, gripping Blair's arm. Sloane, that's enough. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene. Blair turned on him. Tears streaming down her face now. What about her? What about Alissa showing up with some random man and trying to upstage me? No one is upstaging you, Blake said wearily. He looked at me with something like pity. I'm sorry. Alissa, this has gotten out of hand. But Blake's apology didn't matter. My father's belated intervention didn't matter. My mother, standing on the sidelines with her handkerchief pressed to her mouth, didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was that I was done. Done with this family. Done with this toxicity. Done with sacrificing my dignity for people who would never appreciate it. Ethan took my hand again and led me away from the scene. We walked straight to the bar, and he ordered 2 shots of tequila. To surviving family drama, he said, handing me a glass. We drank. The tequila burned, but it felt good. Cleansing. I need to leave. I said, not yet. Ethan said, if you leave now, she wins. She gets to tell everyone, you couldn't handle it, that you ran away. Stay. Just a little longer. He was right. I hated that he was right. But he was. We returned to the reception just as the bouquet toss was being announced. All the single women were called to the dance floor. I stayed rooted to my spot, refusing to participate, but the DJ kept calling my name. Alissa Thorne. Come on. Alissa. Let's get you up here. The crowd started chanting. Alissa, Alissa, Alissa. I looked at Ethan. Disperate. He nodded. Go. I've got you. Reluctantly, I joined the cluster of women on the dance floor. There were maybe 20 of us, ranging from teenagers to women in their 50s. Blair stood at the front, holding her massive bouquet of white roses and peonies, her eyes locked on me with laser focus. This wasn't going to be a normal bouquet toss. I could see it in her eyes. This was going to be another humiliation. The music swelled. Blair turned her back to the crowd, then whipped around and hurled the bouquet straight at me. Not up in the air for everyone to catch, but directly at my face, hard and fast, like she was throwing a baseball. I froze. Time seemed to slow down. The bouquet was sailing toward me, and I knew I wouldn't be able to catch it. I would fumble it, drop it. I look foolish in front of everyone, but then Ethan was there. He lunged forward from the edge of the dance floor, his arm shooting up, and he caught the bouquet midair, inches from my face. The catch was so clean, so athletic, that the entire room gasped. Then the applause started, slowly at first, then building into a roar. People were cheering, whistling, taking photos. The bouquet toss had become something else entirely. A spectacle. A statement. Ethan turned to me, holding the bouquet, and bowed slightly as he presented it to me. His eyes were warm, his smile genuine. Your favorite roses. Alissa, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I believe you'll find your true happiness very soon. I took the bouquet, my hands trembling. The roses were heavy, fragrant, perfect. But they weren't what made my heart race. It was Ethan. This stranger who had appeared out of nowhere and changed everything. Blair stood frozen, her mouth open, her face white as her dress. She looked like she might faint, or explode, or both. The applause continued as Ethan led me off the dance floor. We ended up back at table 14. But now, it didn't feel like exile. It felt like sanctuary. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to thank me," Ethan said. "You would have survived tonight without me. But you shouldn't have to." The rest of the evening passed in a strange blur of heightened awareness. Every time Blair looked in my direction, I could see the confusion and anger warring on her face. She had expected me to crumble, to flee, to confirm every terrible thing she had ever said about me. Instead, I was sitting with a man who looked like he belonged on a magazine cover, holding a bouquet that should have been mine to fumble. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't apologizing for existing. The DJ announced that dinner service was concluding and the dance floor was officially open. Most guests were already up and moving, loosened by champagne and the infectious energy of a celebration. Blair and Blake had their moment in the center, surrounded by family and friends, everyone wanting photos with the happy couple. I stayed at table 14, content to be forgotten for once, but Ethan had other plans. He stood and offered his hand again. "One more dance," he said. "A real one this time." Without interruptions, we returned to the floor, and this time when he pulled me close, I let myself relax into it. His hand was warm on my back, his other hand holding mine firmly. We moved together like we had done this 1,000 times before, and I found myself wondering who this man was. Really? Why he had chosen to help me. What he got out of defending a stranger at a wedding where he barely knew anyone. "You're thinking too hard," Ethan said, reading my expression. "I'm trying to figure you out," I admitted. "What's to figure out?" he said with a slight smile. "I saw someone being treated poorly and I decided to do something about it. It's not complicated. People don't usually do that," I said, "especially not for strangers." "Then you've been surrounded by the wrong people," Ethan said. His gray eyes held mine. "You seem like someone who spent a long time believing you don't deserve basic kindness. But you do. Alyssa, you deserve so much more than what your family gives you." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them back. Not here. Not now. I had held it together this long. The song ended, and we made our way back to our table. Aunt Martha had fallen asleep in her chair, her head tilted back, mouth open, snoring softly. The distant cousins had disappeared somewhere. It was just Ethan and me, sitting in relative peace while the party raged on around us. That's when Blair appeared. Again, but this time she wasn't storming over in a rage. She was walking slowly, deliberately, her smile fixed in place like a mask. She had composed herself, reapplied her lipstick, and was clearly attempting a different approach. "Alyssa," she said, her voice honey-sweet. "Can we talk privately?" I glanced at Ethan. He raised an eyebrow but said nothing, leaving the decision to me. "Whatever you need to say, you can say here," I told Blair. Her smile tightened. "Fine. I just wanted to apologize. I think I may have been a little harsh earlier. Wedding, stress. You know I didn't mean any of it." This was new. Blair never apologized. Ever. Which meant this wasn't an apology at all. It was strategy. "You didn't mean it when you had someone spill champagne on me," I asked. "Or when you gave that speech calling me a pathetic spinster in front of 300 people, or when you tried to hit me with a bouquet." Blair's smile wavered. "I didn't have anyone spill champagne on you. That was an accident. I heard your bridesmaids in the bathroom." "Blair. They were laughing about how you planned it. So let's not pretend." Her mask cracked completely. "Fine. You want the truth, you're embarrassing me. Alyssa, sitting here with some random guy, making yourself the center of attention at my wedding. This is my day. Mine. And you're ruining it." "I'm ruining it," I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts. "I've done nothing but try to survive this evening while you've taken every opportunity to humiliate me. I paid for your college. Blair. I bought you a car. I've given you thousands of dollars over the years. And this is how you treat me." "I never asked you to do any of that," Blair snapped. That was your choice. You wanted to be the big sister, the savior. Well, congratulations. You bought yourself a seat at my wedding, but you didn't buy respect. You can't buy that. The words hit like a physical blow. Because she was right. In a twisted way. I had been trying to buy their love, my parents' approval, Blair's gratitude. I had thought if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, they would finally see my value. But they never would. Because they didn't want to. Ethan stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I think that's enough, he said, his voice cold and final. Blair, you've made your point. Multiple times. But here's what you don't seem to understand. Your sister doesn't need your respect. She doesn't need your approval. She doesn't need anything from you anymore. Blair turned on him. And who the hell are you to tell me about my own sister? You don't know her. You don't know our family. You're just some guy who saw an opportunity to play hero and took it. You're right, Ethan said calmly. I don't know your family history. But I know cruelty when I see it. And I know strength when I see it. Alyssa has more strength in her little finger than you'll ever have. She's been holding this family together while you've been tearing it apart. Oh, please. Blair scoffed. She's not some martyr. She's a 32-year-old woman who can't find a man and blames everyone else for it. I'm standing right here, I said quietly. Both of them turned to look at me. Blair, I don't blame you for my life. I don't blame Mom or Dad or anyone else. But I'm done letting you make me feel worthless. I'm done apologizing for existing, and I'm done being your emotional punching bag. I stood up, picking up my purse and the bouquet. I'm leaving now. Not because you're chasing me away, but because I choose to. I choose to spend my time with people who actually value me. Good luck with your marriage. Blair, I genuinely hope you find happiness, but I won't be around to watch. I started walking toward the exit. Ethan fell into step beside me, his presence solid and reassuring. Behind us, I could hear Blair calling my name, her voice rising in pitch and desperation. Alyssa. Alyssa. Don't you dare walk away from me. I'm not done talking to you. But I was done listening. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself over keeping the peace. It felt terrifying and liberating in equal measure. We made it to the lobby before Blair caught up to us, practically running in her heels, an elaborate dress. My mother was with her now, clutching Blair's arm, both of them looking panicked. Alyssa Catherine Thorne. You stop right there, my mother said in her sternest voice. The voice that used to make me freeze as a child. I turned slowly. What? Mom. Catherine looked flustered, like she hadn't expected me to actually stop. You can't just leave. It's your sister's wedding. What will people think? I don't care what people think, I said. For 32 years, I've cared what people think. I've cared what you think, and it's never been enough. I'm done. Don't be dramatic, Catherine said, waving her hand dismissively. Blair apologized. Let's just move past this and enjoy the rest of the evening. She didn't apologize, I said. She attempted to manipulate me into staying quiet so she could continue her perfect wedding without any complications. There's a difference. Alyssa, please, Blair said, and there were actual tears in her eyes now. Real tears. Not the performative kind she usually deployed. Don't leave like this. I need you here. No, you don't, I said gently. You need an audience. You need someone to feel superior to, but you don't need me. You never have. That's not true, Blair said, her voice breaking. You're my sister. Then act like it, I said. Treat me like it. Because tonight you treated me like garbage. And I'm not going to stand here and pretend that's okay, just because we share DNA. My father appeared from somewhere, looking annoyed. What's going on here, Alyssa? Why are you causing problems? That was the final straw. After everything that had happened tonight, after every humiliation and insult, he thought I was the one causing problems. I'm leaving. Dad, I said. That's all. Blair can continue her perfect wedding without me. You're being selfish, he said flatly. This is your sister's big day. Can't you put your own feelings aside for once? I stared at him. This man, who was supposed to protect me, who was supposed to make me feel valued and loved. And I realized I didn't recognize him at all. Maybe I never had. Goodbye. Dad, I said. Then I turned to my mother. Goodbye. Mom. Finally. I looked at Blair. Goodbye. Blair. I hope you get everything you deserve. Ethan opened the door for me, and we walked out into the cool night air. Behind us, I could hear my family calling my name, but their voices grew fainter with each step. We reached the parking lot, and I realized I didn't have a way home. I had come in an Uber, planning to stay until the end. I'll drive you, Ethan said, reading my mind. He gestured to a sleek black Mercedes parked in the first row. Of course he drove a Mercedes. We climbed in, and he started the engine, but didn't put it in gear yet. He turned to look at me in the dim light of the car. Are you okay? He asked. That's when I broke. All the emotion I had been holding back all night came rushing out in huge, gasping sobs. I buried my face in my hands, and I cried. I cried for the sister I never really had. I cried for the parents who chose favorites and never saw me. I cried for all the years I had wasted trying to earn love that was never going to be given freely. Ethan didn't say anything. He just reached over and pulled me into his arms, letting me cry into his expensive suit. His hand rubbed my back in slow, soothing circles, and he murmured things I couldn't quite hear, but that sounded comforting. Eventually, the sobs subsided. I pulled back, embarrassed, wiping at my face. My makeup was probably destroyed. I'm sorry, I said. I just ruined your jacket. I don't care about the jacket. Ethan said, Do you want to talk about it? What's there to talk about? I said bitterly. My family is toxic. I finally stood up for myself. And now I'm probably going to lose them all. Would that be such a loss? Ethan asked carefully. From what I saw tonight, they don't add much value to your life. They're still my family, I said weakly. Family is supposed to build you up, not tear you down. Ethan said, Blood doesn't give people the right to treat you like garbage. He was right. I knew he was right. But knowing it and accepting it were two different things. Where do you live? Ethan asked. I'll take you home. I gave him my address, and he pulled out of the parking lot. We drove in comfortable silence for a while, the city lights blurring past the windows. I felt empty, has wrung out, but also strangely lighter, like I had been carrying a weight I didn't know I had, and now it was gone. Thank you, I said eventually, for everything tonight. You didn't have to do any of that. I wanted to, Ethan said, and for what it's worth, I meant what I said back there. You're strong, Alyssa. Stronger than you give yourself credit for. We pulled up in front of my apartment building. It wasn't fancy. Just a modest, 3-story complex in a decent neighborhood. Ethan put the car in park but didn't turn off the engine. This is me, I said awkwardly. Can I walk you to your door? He asked. I nodded. We got out, and he followed me up the stairs to the second floor. My hands were shaking as I fumbled with my keys. When I finally got the door open, I turned to face him. Thank you again, I said. I don't know what I would have done without you tonight. You would have survived, Ethan said. You always do. There was a moment of silence, charged with something I couldn't quite name. Then Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. This has my number, he said, handing it to me. If you need anything, even just someone to talk to, call me. I took the card, studying it. Ethan Vance, CEO, Vance Technologies. My eyes widened. Wait, Vance Technologies, the software company. That's the one, he said with a slight smile. You're the Ethan Vance, I said, stunned. I've read about you. You're worth millions. Does that change anything? He asked, watching me carefully. I don't know, I said honestly. I guess I'm just surprised. Why would someone like you care about my family drama? Because underneath the money and the company, I'm just a person, Ethan said, and I recognize pain when I see it. I spent years in a toxic family situation myself. I know what it's like to feel invisible, undervalued. I got out, and when I saw you tonight, I saw someone who deserved better. That's all, I looked down at the business card in my hand, then back up at him. Will you call me? I asked, surprising myself with the boldness. Do you want me to? He asked. Yes. I said, I really do. His smile widened. Then I will. Get some rest. Alyssa, tomorrow is going to be easier. I promise. He turned and walked back down the stairs. I watched until he got into his car and drove away. Then I went inside and locked the door behind me. My apartment was quiet, dark, peaceful. I dropped my purse and the bouquet on the couch and went straight to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. My makeup was smudged. My hair was disheveled. My dress was stained beyond repair. But there was something different in my eyes. A spark of something that hadn't been there before. Hope. Maybe. Or just the tiniest bit of self-respect. I took a long shower, washing away the champagne and wine and the humiliation of the evening. Then I climbed into bed and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. All from my family. My mother begging me to call her back. My father demanding I apologize. Blair alternating between angry messages, calling me selfish, and tearful messages, saying she needed me. I deleted them all without reading past the first few. Then I blocked their numbers. It felt radical. It felt terrifying. It felt necessary. I spent the morning cleaning my apartment, doing laundry. All the mundane tasks that helped ground me. Around noon, my phone rang with an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered, Hello, Alyssa. It's Ethan. His voice came through warm and familiar. I hope I'm not calling too early. Not at all, I said, surprised by how happy I was to hear from him. I've been up for hours. How are you feeling? He asked. Surprisingly okay, I said. Scared, but okay. That's normal, he said. Listen, I know this might be forward, but I'd like to take you to dinner. Tonight, if you're free. My heart skipped. Like a date. Yes, he said. Like a date. If that's something you'd be interested in. I thought about Blair's mocking words about my Excel spreadsheets. I thought about my mother's passive disappointment. I thought about all the years I had spent believing I wasn't enough. And then I thought about Ethan, standing up for me, catching the bouquet, looking at me like I mattered. I'd love to, I said. That dinner turned into another date. And another? Within 2 weeks, Ethan and I were spending almost every evening together. He introduced me to his world. Fancy restaurants and rooftop bars and gallery openings. But he also seemed just as happy coming to my apartment with takeout and watching movies on my worn couch. 1 month after Blair's wedding, Ethan showed up at my door with flowers. Not roses, but peonies. My actual favorite, though I had never told him. How did you know? I asked. Taking the bouquet, I pay attention, he said with a smile. Can I come in? I have something I want to talk to you about. My stomach fluttered nervously as I let him in. We sat on the couch, and he took my hands in his bro. Alyssa, I know we haven't known each other long, he began, but I've never felt this way about anyone before. You're smart, funny, kind, resilient. Everything I didn't know I was looking for. Ethan, I started, but he held up a hand. Let me finish, he said. I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. But I am asking you to give this, us, a real chance. Move in with me. Not because you need to, but because I want you to. Because I want to wake up next to you every morning and come home to you every night. I stared at him, shocked. That's crazy. It's too fast. Maybe, he said. Or maybe when you know. No pressure. Alyssa, think about it. Take your time. But I didn't need time. I had spent 32 years playing it safe, doing what was expected, trying to please people who would never be pleased. And where had it gotten me? Yes, I said. Yes, I'll move in with you. His face lit up. Really? Really? I said, laughing. But I need one promise from you. Anything, he said. Promise me. You'll always be honest. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I'm done with people who say what I want to hear instead of what I need to hear. I promise, he said solemnly. Then he pulled me into a kiss that made my toes curl and my heart race. 2 weeks later, I moved into Ethan's penthouse. It was absurdly large, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Seattle skyline, a gourmet kitchen, and a master bedroom bigger than my entire apartment had been. It should have felt intimidating, but instead it felt like home. My family continued to try to contact me. They sent emails, left voicemails, even showed up at my old apartment once. But I had moved, changed my number, and made it clear through my lawyer that I needed space. They could respect my boundaries, or they could have no relationship with me at all. It was Blair who broke first. 3 months after her wedding, I received a letter at my new address. I don't know how she got it, but the envelope was thick, the handwriting careful. Inside was a 5-page letter, an actual apology, not the manipulative kind she had tried at the wedding, but a real acknowledgement of the pain she had caused. She wrote about her own insecurities, her jealousy of my independence, her fear that she would never measure up. She wrote about the pressure she felt from our parents to be perfect, and how she had dealt with it by making me the imperfect one. By comparison, she didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't ask me to call her. She just said she was sorry, and that she understood if I never wanted to speak to her again. I showed the letter to Ethan. "What should I do?" I asked. "What do you want to do?" he replied. I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to throw the letter away, to maintain my boundaries, to protect myself from potential future hurt. But another part of me remembered the sister Blair had been when we were children, before the comparisons and competitions started. The sister who had crawled into my bed during thunderstorms, the sister who had made me laugh until I cried. "I want to respond," I said finally, but slowly, on my terms. I wrote back a short note saying I appreciated her honesty and that I needed more time, but that I was open to rebuilding our relationship if she was willing to do the work. That meant therapy, both individual and family. That meant respecting my boundaries. That meant no more public humiliation. No, more financial manipulation. No more treating me as less than. To my surprise, she agreed. We started meeting once a month for coffee. Just the two of us. In neutral territory. The first few meetings were awkward, stilted, both of us feeling our way through this new dynamic. But slowly, carefully, we began to build something different. Not the sisterhood we had lost, but perhaps something better. Something based on mutual respect instead of hierarchy. My parents were a different story. They refused therapy, refused to acknowledge their role in the toxic family dynamics. They wanted me to just move on and pretend nothing had happened. When I refused, they cut me off completely. It hurt, but it was also freeing. I mourned the parents I wished I had, but I stopped waiting for them to change into those people. 3 months after Blair's wedding, Ethan and I were planning something of our own. Not a wedding. Not yet, but an engagement party. He had proposed one evening on our balcony, the emerald ring glinting in the sunset, and I had said yes without hesitation. The party was intimate, just close friends and people who genuinely cared about us. No family drama, no forced smiles, no walking on eggshells. Just love and laughter and celebration. We sent an invitation to Blair. I wasn't sure if she would come. I wasn't sure if I wanted her to come. But Ethan encouraged me. "She's trying," he said. "That counts for something." Blair did come. She arrived alone, Blake having left her just weeks after their wedding, when he discovered she had been secretly accumulating credit card debt in his name. She looked different. Smaller somehow, dressed simply in a blue sundress instead of her usual designer labels. She brought me a gift. Not something expensive, but a photo album filled with pictures of us as children. Pictures I had never seen before. Moments I had forgotten. Us building sandcastles. Us in matching Halloween costumes. Us laughing together. "I found these at Mom and Dad's," she said quietly. "I thought you should have them, to remember that it wasn't always bad." I looked through the album, tears blurring my vision. "Thank you," I said. "This means a lot." "I'm proud of you," Blair said suddenly. "For leaving that night, for choosing yourself." I should have been doing that all along instead of trying to tear you down. We hugged. Tentatively at first. Then tighter. It wasn't forgiveness. Not complete forgiveness. But it was a start. The months that followed were the happiest of my life. Ethan and I set a wedding date. Started planning our future together. Talked about children and careers and dreams. I got a promotion at work. Started therapy to work through my family trauma. And slowly built a chosen family of friends who valued and respected me. My wedding day arrived on a perfect spring morning. The venue was spectacular. A historic estate with gardens in full bloom. 300 guests. But this time they were people who actually cared about me. Colleagues. Friends. Ethan's family, who had welcomed me with open arms. Blair came. She sat in the family section. Not in the front row, but not in the back either. She had asked if she could be part of the wedding, maybe as a bridesmaid. But I had gently declined. That felt like too much too soon. But her presence was enough. It was progress. My parents were not invited. That boundary remained firm. Maybe someday it would change. But not today. Today was about celebrating love. Not obligating dysfunction. As I walked down the aisle on the arm of Ethan's father, who had offered when he learned mine wouldn't be there, I felt no regret. No sadness about the empty seats where my parents should have been. Only gratitude for the people who were there, who had chosen to celebrate with us. Ethan waited at the altar, looking devastating in his tuxedo, his eyes bright with tears. When I reached him, he took both my hands and mouthed, "You're beautiful." The ceremony was perfect. We had written our own vows. And when it was my turn, I looked at this man who had appeared in my life at my lowest moment and changed everything. "Ethan," I began, my voice steady despite my emotions. 6 months ago, I thought I knew what love looked like. I thought it was sacrifice without reciprocation. I thought it was making myself smaller so others could feel bigger. I thought it was earning affection through endless giving. I squeezed his hands. "But you showed me what love really is. Love is choosing someone every day. Love is standing up for them when they can't stand up for themselves. Love is seeing someone at their worst and believing in their best. You gave me the courage to choose myself. And in doing so, I was finally able to choose you." There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Even Blair was crying, dabbing at her face with a tissue. Ethan's vows were equally moving, talking about how I had taught him that vulnerability was strength, that healing was possible, that it was never too late to build the life you deserved. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the applause was thunderous. Ethan kissed me, and camera flashes exploded around us, capturing the moment. Not the moment I became complete, because I was already complete, but the moment I chose to share my completeness with someone who cherished it. The reception was magical. Dancing and laughter and speeches that made people cry, happy tears. My best friend Maya gave a toast about watching me transform over the past 6 months. About how I had gone from someone who apologized for existing to someone who celebrated it. Late in the evening, as Ethan and I swayed together on the dance floor, I caught sight of Blair standing alone near the edge of the room. She was watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Sadness. Maybe. Or wistfulness. Or perhaps just genuine happiness for me mixed with regret for what she had lost. I caught her eye and smiled. A real smile. Not cold or victorious. Just honest. She smiled back. Small but sincere. And raised her glass in a silent toast. "Your sister looks better," Ethan murmured, following my gaze. "She's trying," I said. "That's all I can ask for." "Do you think you'll ever fully forgive her?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I think I'm okay with not knowing. Some things don't need to be resolved completely to move forward." He kissed my forehead. "When did you get so wise?" "When I finally started listening to myself instead of everyone else," I said. As the night wound down and guests started to leave, Blair approached us one last time. She looked nervous, clutching her small purse. "I'm going to head out," she said. "But I wanted to say congratulations again. Your wedding was beautiful. Alyssa, everything you deserved. Thank you for coming," I said. It meant a lot. Blair hesitated, then said, "I know I don't have the right to ask this, but maybe we could get coffee next month, continue our meetings." I glanced at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. "I'd like that," I told Blair. She smiled, looking relieved, and gave me a quick hug before leaving. Ethan and I stayed until the very end, not wanting the night to end. Finally, we walked out to his car, my wedding dress trailing behind me, his jacket slung over my shoulders against the evening chill. "Ready for the rest of our lives?" he asked, opening the car door for me. I looked back at the venue one last time, at the twinkling lights and the remnants of our celebration. Then I looked at Ethan, this man who had seen me at my worst and loved me anyway. "More than ready," I said. We drove to the airport for our honeymoon, the city lights fading behind us. And as we flew toward our new adventure, I realized something profound. The best revenge really wasn't revenge at all. It wasn't about making Blair suffer or proving my parents wrong or showing anyone what they had lost by undervaluing me. The best revenge was simply living well, building a life I loved, choosing people who chose me back, setting boundaries and keeping them, loving myself enough to walk away from toxicity, even when it was dressed up as family obligation. Blair's wedding had been a turning point, but not in the way she had intended. She had wanted to humiliate me, to put me in my place, to confirm her superiority. Instead, she had inadvertently given me the push I needed to finally choose myself. And in choosing myself, I had found everything I never knew I was missing. So here's what I want to know from all of you. Have you ever had to walk away from a toxic family member to save yourself? How did you find the strength to choose your own happiness over family expectations? Drop your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if it gave you hope or strength or just entertained you for a few minutes, do-me a favor, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss a story. And share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that.